The 1963 Yemeni Revolution was successful in ending almost 130 years of British rule in Yemen. Shortly after the end of World War II, most of Britain's colonies had managed to gain independence from British rule, and in 1947, the British no longer had control of India. Therefore, the British colony of Yemen was no longer as strategically important for the British as it once was, because they had previously used Yemen as a refueling station for their ships on their way to British India. The Yemeni people's desire for independence increased even more in 1956, after the British-backed monarchy in Egypt was overthrown in a military coup by Jamal Abdel Nasser, who kicked the British Navy out of the Suez Canal. Therefore, during the 1950s, many Yemeni political groups, such as the Free South Arabian League Party, founded by Muhammad bin Ali al-Jifri, the Yemeni Islamic Reform Movement, led by Ahmed Muhammad Saeed al-Asnaj, and the Aden Trade Union Congress, led by Abdullah al-Asnaj, began calling for independence from British rule. By the early 1960s, negotiations for independence between Yemeni politicians and the British government were underway. In 1964, a new government headed by the Labour Party won the United Kingdom general election, and the new British Prime Minister Harold Wilson attempted to grant independence to Yemen. However, this proposal was rejected by the American President Johnson, who did not want Britain to withdraw from Yemen during the ongoing Vietnam War, as the Americans wanted to use the Yemeni port of Aden as a refueling station for their warships which were headed to Vietnam. Therefore, under American pressure, the British decided not to go through with their promise of granting independence to Yemenis. Realizing that the British were not going to give them independence, Yemenis decided to take the path of violence to achieve independence. Many Yemenis formed their own militias and began attacking British soldiers and military bases. For example, Abdullah al-Asnaj formed his own rebel army known as the Front for the Liberation of Occupied South Yemen. Qahtan al-Sha'bi, who was a Yemeni engineer educated in Egypt, also formed his own anti-British militia, which was funded by the Egyptian government. At the same time, hundreds of soldiers in the British Yemeni army defected and joined the rebels. The rebellion spread like a wildfire across Yemen. Many other armed Yemeni groups emerged after obtaining funding and weapons from either Egypt or the Soviet Union. Local militias and tribal rebels also joined the call for revolution. On 14th October 1963, a Yemeni rebel known as Raja bin Ghalib Labuza ambushed a convoy of British soldiers in the Misra Valley in the Radfan Mountains with a force of 200 rebels. After a fierce firefight with the British army, Raja bin Labuza was killed. In December 1963, Yemeni rebels detonated a bomb inside the Aden airport, which killed the British commander George Henderson. Fierce ambushes and attacks against British soldiers took place throughout Yemen, and the guerrilla war continued into the next year. In response to ambushes and attacks, the British Army launched a deadly bombing campaign across Yemen and killed many defenseless civilians. Many tribal leaders such as Mut'i bin Abdullah Dammaj of the Bakil tribe also declared war against the British and began attacking British bases. The rebellion continued to spread throughout Yemen, and by the year 1965, the Yemeni Revolution had also reached the eastern region of Hadramaut. In July 1966, the Yemeni rebels in the region of Hadramaut killed the British commander known as Colonel Grey. The British were in a state of panic and requested the help of various influential Yemeni princes to help crush the rebellion. However, many Yemeni princes such as Sultan Ali Abdullah Karim of Lahaj and Sultan Muhammad Aidarus refused to help the British and sided with the rebels. In February 1967, large crowds protested in the city of Aden in massive demonstrations against British colonialism during the funeral of Mahyoob Ali Ghalib, who was a Yemeni killed by the British Army. Yemenis also issued revolutionary statements through newspapers and radio, calling on people to rise up against the British. For example, in 1967, the Al-Mukalla radio station was established for the purpose of promoting anti-British rebellion. Many intellectuals and poets such as Idris Hanbala and Muhammad Ali Luqman also participated in the revolution and published anti-British articles and poems in order to motivate the rebels. Many Islamic preachers and imams such as Sheikh Muhammad bin Salim al-Bayhani also called on the Yemeni people to join the rebellion against the British. Eventually, by November 1967, the rebellion had costed the lives of 93 British soldiers, and the British could not afford to continue their presence in Yemen. On November 21st, negotiations began in Geneva between a Yemeni delegation led by Qahtan al-Sha'bi and a British delegation led by Lord Shackleton in order to arrange the withdrawal of British forces from Yemen. An agreement was signed, and on 30th November 1967, the British were forced to leave Yemen after 128 years of ruling the country.